we're completely unlisted. So we've got a 41 asset, diversified, unlisted only portfolio. And I think we think there's a place for listed and unlisted in everyone's wholesale investor portfolio. So we think listed infrastructure and unlisted definitely belong in that portfolio. We just don't believe they belong together in the same set of assets. That's where we think, that's what we think our competitive advantage or our distinctiveness is. And that's actually the same way as the Future Fund treats their infrastructure allocations. And why is that? Because we don't think that having volatility, it's all about correlation and trying to remove volatility and or manage your volatility within the context of your investment decision. And then some of the other more fundamental differences between listed and unlisted. Most of Australia's essential infrastructure assets are actually unlisted. There's something like a handful of listed stocks on the stock exchange, the ASX. Sydney Airport's just another example of possible privatization, effectively, of what's a listed infrastructure stock. So most of the assets, 80% of our portfolio, for example, is actually across Australian assets, which are not, you can't find them on the stock exchange. So there's a limited investable universe. I think that one of the fundamentals is liquidity. So the trade-off in terms of liquidity between unlisted and listed is obviously we have a longer term liquidity window, whereas obviously listed is daily. And then I think, and then the other sorts of sort of fundamental differences are around valuation, which we think are fairly important. And we're priced monthly. The stock market obviously is a daily pricing event, but we price on fundamentals. We don't price on emotion, which can happen from time to time. So we have a long look through in terms of a 25-year DCF model. We have observable cash flows, which are clear. There's a transparent process, and it's provided monthly. And I think that limits or dampens the volatility component compared to listed infrastructure. And we've seen that over the COVID period as well. Well, airports in our portfolio are very important, and we've been invested in them for some time. What we think about in terms of those assets and that asset class, we've got like 75 years remaining on those concessions, and COVID absolutely has had an impact. But it's in the context of a 75-year remaining concession. It's a very small element of impacting that business model. But essentially, an airport is three assets in one. That's how we like to think of them. There's a shadow regulation in relation to the aeronautical revenue that you have in relation with your airline counterpart. There's commercial retail, so it's like a shopping centre, and a very good shopping centre and captive shopping centre as the second component. And then the third component is property development. So you've got an extraordinary land bank with significant long-term leases attached to it. And in the current, even during the sort of post-COVID world, around the transition to online shopping and the movement of goods through air freight, as we've seen, been quite a strong performer as that third component of the asset. And then, just wrapping that all up as a natural position in the economy, where invariably there's only one airport servicing a capital city. It's got a very strong position in terms of its business model, and hence there's no alternative uses. You think about Perth, for example. It's the most isolated capital city globally. The only way to and from Perth, unless you've got a lot of time on your hands, is through Perth Airport. And Perth Airport is one of our largest assets. And we invest on behalf of Australian wholesale SMSF investors alongside the future fund in that asset. So we think airports, notwithstanding the impacts of state lockdowns, of the international borders closures, we think it's a fundamental asset in the portfolio and a critical part of the Australian economy. And so the rebound and the growth from both domestic and international passengers we will see that come through over time, and we're pretty excited about what the drive that's going to deliver through the portfolio. We think it's fantastic, and what is that? In what context? It just underpins the value of the 41 assets that we have in terms of the offering to the wholesale, the Australian SMSF wholesale investor. The really long-term smart money around the industry funds with long-term vision, with long-term investment horizons, have recognized that such a terrific asset as Sydney Airport is good value. And so for them to make that decision, I think that speaks to a number of things. It says to the recognition about the quality of these assets in every portfolio. And it also recognizes, it's almost a catalyst for the re-rate of the sector, or in terms of the airport sector, certainly from our perspective. So I think we're seeing it not just with the Australian pension funds and industry funds. You're seeing global Canadian pension funds all looking at significant stakes in Australian assets and indeed globally. So I think they're doing the same things that every wholesale investor should be thinking about in the context of getting assets or getting hold of assets with low correlation to listed markets and volatility, that can be that foundation of the portfolio that we sort of talk about. So that trend will continue. There's a very large and growing cash pile of we call it dry powder in terms of investable cash that's a lot of those big funds have, and I think we'll continue to see those really trophy listed assets, at least structures or transactions happen at increasing pace. What does that do? It makes the listed infrastructure universe narrower, and the opportunities, certainly domestically, as they disappear off the ASX, it makes the listed infrastructure sector more global. And so from our perspective, well, we think that's terrific, because it gives the investor an opportunity to get listed global exposure, but unlisted domestic exposure through our vehicles. So that's our view there.